At my graduation party, my family ignored me and talked about my cousin's bright future. I just raised my glass, then announced what I'd been working on. The room froze. I should have seen it coming. The moment I walked into the backyard and saw the banner, "Congratulations, class of 2025. I knew this wasn't really for me. Not the way it should have been. The banner was generic, the food was catered by the cheapest service in town, and the playlist blasting from the corner speaker was a Spotify default mix, not a single song I'd ever saved. And yet there they all were. My aunts, uncles, grandparents, and a few cousins I hadn't seen since I was still in braces, all gathered, laughing over lemonade and deviled eggs, basking in the glow of someone else's achievements. Someone named Ethan. Ethan, with his pressed polo shirt and his endless string of rehearsed humility. Ethan, who had somehow turned my graduation party into a Harvard pre-send-off. I stood near the grill with a paper plate in my hand, watching my Uncle Dan brag for the third time about Ethan's upcoming internship. "I mean, Goldman Sachs. That's not just some summer job, you know? He's already building his future." I shifted my weight and nodded like I hadn't heard this 5 minutes ago. Or 5 years ago. Because Ethan had always been the one, the golden boy, the family's prodigy. I was just the computer kid. Quiet, focused, forgettable. No one had asked what I planned to do after graduation. No one even seemed to remember that I had spent 4 years earning my degree in computer science while working nights at a grocery store to keep my loans down. They were too busy circling Ethan like he was already the CEO of Earth. My mom approached me at one point and said, "Isn't it great how close you and Ethan are in age? You'll both be out there in the world, doing big things." Then she kissed my cheek and walked away before I could answer. That was the first sign. That this night, my night, wasn't really mine at all. I stood there, listening to the clinking of glasses and the hum of praise swirling around Ethan like a halo. I was smiling, or at least I was trying to, but inside, something sharp was pressing against my ribs. It wasn't just jealousy. It was history. I've heard that tone before, the breathless excitement whenever Ethan was mentioned. The way Uncle Dan's voice got loud and proud, like he was announcing a state senator. The way my grandparents leaned forward, eyes bright, every time Ethan opened his mouth. It's always been this way. Back in high school, I remember winning the regional coding competition. I came home, trophy in hand, and my mom barely looked up from her phone. Ethan had made honor roll that same week, again, and we spent an entire dinner dissecting his GPA. That was the rhythm of our family. Some people orbit the sun. We orbited Ethan. So when my cousin Jessica leaned in and asked, "So, are you going to do a startup or just get a job at, like, Google or something?" I blinked. For a second, I thought she was asking me. She wasn't. She was looking at Ethan. I was 3 feet away. Holding a plate. Wearing the cap and gown. He laughed, the kind of modest, charming laugh you practice in a mirror. "Google's cool, but I'm thinking bigger picture. Startups, maybe VC-backed. That kind of thing." Everyone nodded like he just revealed the cure for cancer. That's when it really hit me. They didn't know. Not one of them had a clue. Not my parents. Not my uncle. Not even Ethan. They had no idea what I'd been building. For the last year, I'd been quietly pouring every ounce of energy I had into a software platform. Something real, something big. While Ethan was updating his LinkedIn bio, I was on Zoom calls at midnight with co-founders in 3 time zones. We built a tool that helped automate cloud security for large-scale operations. And last week, we landed 6 figures in funding. A well-known VC firm, one with deep pockets and Fortune 500 ties, signed on. They loved it. They wanted in. Our launch date was already locked in with our first major client. But I hadn't told anyone. Not because I was hiding it. Because I wanted to earn the silence before the storm. Now here I was, invisible at my own party, listening to them fawn over someone else's potential while mine was sitting in my pocket, in a working demo on my phone. And something shifted in me. I stopped smiling. I started planning. I didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I did what I've always done, I observed. I watched as Ethan basked in the attention, modest enough to avoid sounding arrogant, but just polished enough to keep the spotlight fixed on him. He even stood different now, like someone who knew people were watching and wanted them to. He had the swagger of someone who'd never had to wonder if they mattered. Aunt Leslie asked if he'd started thinking about where he'd want to live after graduation. "Definitely the Bay Area," he said with a confident grin. "It just makes sense for someone in my field." My field. I stood there nursing a watered-down lemonade, listening as Ethan described his passion for innovation. He said he wanted to be on the bleeding edge of technology. I nearly choked when he claimed he was thinking about launching something of his own. "Oh, maybe an app or platform," he said, waving it off casually. "I have a few ideas. Nothing concrete yet." That was the moment I felt it, the turn in my gut. Not anger. Not even jealousy. Pure, distilled clarity. This family wouldn't see value unless it hit them in the face with a press release and a cash flow chart. They didn't want quiet work, or focus, or steady discipline. They wanted fireworks. Sound bites. Recognition. And if that was the game, then fine. I could play. I glanced at the small speaker on the patio table, the one they were using for music. Bluetooth. Easily hijacked. My demo could run off an Android. I slid my phone from my pocket and tapped the app, our app, then minimized it and opened the media settings. Not yet, I told myself. Let them finish. Uncle Dan raised his glass to give a toast. To Ethan, our future tech mogul. The world's not ready for him, but they better get there fast. Everyone clapped. Some cheered. A few whistled. My parents smiled. That was when I knew it was time. I stepped forward slowly. Glass in hand. My voice cut clean through the chatter. I'd like to say something. Everything paused. It wasn't dramatic, just one of those weird silences that falls over a party when something shifts in the room. Like a cold breeze no one can see. A few people turned. Most kept smiling, assuming I was about to offer up some sweet little toast to Ethan. My dad looked vaguely annoyed, like I'd interrupted a commercial break during his favorite show. I held up my glass, not high, just eye level, and cleared my throat. "First off," I said, "Ethan, congratulations." He smiled. That politician's smile again. Practiced. Pleasant. Unmoved. "You've worked hard, and I know everyone here is proud of you." There were nods. Someone muttered, "That's right." I took a slow sip of lemonade. My hand was steady now. I had rehearsed this moment in my head too many times for nerves to ruin it. But since this is also my graduation party, I continued, letting that also land like a coin dropped into a quiet room. I figured I should say a little something too. A few polite chuckles. Aunt Leslie blinked. Ethan's smile twitched. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and said, "While Ethan was busy preparing for Goldman Sachs, I've been working on a little project of my own. Nights. Weekends. Holidays. For the past year." Now I had their attention. Confused, but listening. "What kind of project?" someone asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the app, tapped a button, and let the speaker connect. The little chime rang out, replacing the music. Then the interface loaded, glowing bright on my phone screen for all to see. "This," I said, "is SentinelStream." I paused. A ripple of silence. It's a cloud-based platform that automates real-time security compliance for enterprise-level systems. We just closed a $600,000 funding round last week. The air thinned. We launch in Q3 with our first client, Thurston and Hale. They're a Fortune 500 company. You might have heard of them. I saw it happen. The shift. Uncle Dan blinked like he'd misheard. Aunt Leslie's eyes darted between me and Ethan. My mother's mouth parted slightly. Even my father tilted his head, like a statue suddenly unsure of its footing. But it was Ethan's face that changed the most. His smile vanished. For a long, almost comic stretch of seconds, no one spoke. You could hear the breeze flicking through the patio umbrellas, the faint hiss of a soda can being opened in the background, and the soft tap of my finger as I pulled up the live dashboard on my phone. "I've been quiet about it," I said, voice steady. "We were under NDA until the paperwork cleared. But it's official now. And since we're all here, I thought I'd share." I turned the screen toward them. Even from a few feet away, you could see the numbers on the dashboard, revenue projections, back-end metrics, live monitoring modules. It wasn't a prototype. It wasn't a pitch deck. It was a living platform. Clean. Sleek. Real. And then, like breaking glass in a silent church, my grandfather said softly, "That's a real client? Confirmed last week." I nodded. Their legal team signed off Thursday morning. Now it was my uncle's turn. The one who had been championing Ethan all night. The one who once said to my face, "You should try being more like him." Ethan thinks ahead. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Ethan was still standing by the table, his red solo cup frozen in midair. I could see it in his face. The quick calculations, the scrambling, trying to figure out if what I said was true, if I had just hijacked his spotlight, or if I'd somehow rewritten the script entirely. I helped him along. "We're being represented by Marlowe Ventures," I added casually. "I'm sure some of you read about them in Forbes last quarter. They've got a great eye for scalable products." Someone let out a low whoa. There it was. That first taste of validation, earned, not asked for. It didn't come with applause, but it didn't need to. It came with silence. Heavy, thoughtful, reverent silence. I let it linger for a moment longer. Then I said, "Anyway, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. And to Ethan again, Harvard's lucky to have you." I raised my glass. This time, everyone else was still holding theirs. The clinking sound of my own glass returning to the table was the only response for a beat too long. Then suddenly, laughter. Tight, awkward, forced. Ethan's laugh. It came out a second too late and a shade too loud. "Wow, man," he said, plastering on a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "That's really cool. I had no idea you were working on something like that." He tried to chuckle again, but it faltered halfway. "Thurston and Hale, huh? Big name. Congrats." His voice was trying to sound light, congratulatory. But there was a slight tremor underneath it. A wobble in his words, like a tightrope walker just now realizing the wind had picked up. "Thanks," I said. We kept things quiet until it was real. A few more murmurs rippled through the group. Questions started bubbling. When does it launch? How do you get the funding? Wait, what kind of software is it again? Suddenly, I wasn't the background character anymore. I was the conversation. Ethan stood frozen in the same spot, his drink untouched. For years, he had been the gravitational center of every family gathering. Now, the orbit was shifting. People were leaning toward me, not him. Uncle Dan, his biggest cheerleader, walked over and looked down at my phone. "You built this from scratch?" he asked, his voice lower now. "Just you?" "Me and 2 friends from college." I nodded. "We've been working out of a co-working space and a lot of late-night Slack calls." He scratched his jaw, nodding. "That's impressive." "That's very impressive." Ethan, still standing awkwardly near the patio table, cleared his throat. "Well, I mean, this isn't a competition, right?" he said, trying to smile. "We're all on different paths." No one responded. It was subtle, but real. His voice didn't land the way it used to. I don't think I'll ever forget the look on Ethan's face right then, not angry, not jealous exactly, but cracked. Like someone who had always been told the race was his alone to win, only to find out, mid-stride, that someone else had quietly crossed the finish line. He tried to recover. "So," he said, stepping toward me with that same grin he wore when we were kids and he'd beaten me at something. "What's your burn rate look like? I mean, 6 figures is good, but that doesn't stretch far in development, right?" Ah. There it was. The pivot. When charm fails, go technical. Make it sound like you know more. Reassert control. I smiled. "We're running lean. Most of the funding's for expansion. We already have a stable MVP. The clients onboarding in June. I could feel it, the tension curling around us like smoke. The family was listening. Really listening. Ethan opened his mouth to speak again, but this time my dad interrupted. My dad, who had barely acknowledged my existence during the party. Wait, you're saying they're already using it? I nodded. Pilot access started last week. We have their IT lead in our Slack workspace. My father blinked, like something he thought he understood about me had been yanked away. I could see the gears shifting behind his eyes. And then came the wildest moment of all. My grandfather, who once told me, "It's good you're into computers, but don't expect to make real money with that," leaned in close and said, "So, are you hiring yet?" I laughed. Not to be rude, just because I hadn't expected that. Ethan didn't laugh. He just stood there, nodding slowly, his jaw clenched in a way that didn't match his eyes. Aunt Leslie finally broke the silence with a half-hearted, "Well, both of you boys are doing great things." But it sounded hollow. Like someone trying to glue the spotlight back together, even though the bulb had already shattered. After that moment, the tone of the party changed like a song you didn't realize had ended. It wasn't loud. No one jumped up and applauded. No one hugged me or rushed to take selfies beside my glowing dashboard. But something invisible had pivoted, like the ground had quietly tilted beneath our feet. And everyone was trying to pretend they didn't notice. But they did. I saw it in the way Aunt Leslie repositioned herself closer to me, like she suddenly remembered we were family. I saw it in how my dad, who usually spoke to me in nods and half-hearted grunts, started asking me pointed questions about software architecture, as if he'd been following my career from the sidelines all along. "What language did you build it in?" he asked, like he knew what that meant. "Go back-end," I said. "React front-end. We use Terraform to manage infrastructure." He gave a thoughtful nod. Smart. Smart. From the man who once told me, "You're always on that laptop. Go outside and live a little." Even Ethan's younger brother Caleb wandered over holding a plate of cold pasta salad and whispered, "Hey, that Sentinel thing, can I try it? Like, as a beta or whatever?" I told him sure. And it was strange, because for the first time ever, he looked at me the way he'd always looked at Ethan. The whispers started slow. Little pockets of conversation that didn't stop when I walked by, but instead welcomed me in. "I read about Marlowe Ventures last month," my cousin Melissa said, sidling up with that wide-eyed curiosity I'd never seen pointed in my direction. "They're like huge, right?" "They're focused," I said carefully, trying not to gloat. "But yeah. Good track record." "Does that mean you'll be rich now?" she asked, half joking, half hoping. "Like startup millionaire rich?" I laughed. "It means I won't be borrowing gas money from my parents anymore." Even that landed like a subtle jab. Because of course, I had borrowed money once or twice. And of course, everyone remembered it. But now the context had shifted. Before it made me a struggling post-grad. Now, it made me the underdog who'd made it. That's what no one tells you about family. They don't remember your details. They remember your trajectory. And right then, mine had changed. Across the yard, Ethan was trying to recover. I could see it in his posture, straighter now, hands gesturing wider, voice a little louder than necessary as he spoke to a new group. He was telling them about his trip to Boston next month, how he'd be networking with investors, how his roommate's dad was super connected. It sounded desperate now. Thin. Like someone tugging on a thread, hoping it would lead back to the attention he'd lost. Uncle Dan was still near me, watching the demo over my shoulder. He looked like he wanted to say something meaningful, something wise, something that would let him attach himself to this moment without admitting he'd missed it coming. "Why didn't you tell us you were working on something like this?" he asked finally. I could have told him the truth, that it never mattered to them until it mattered to someone else. That Ethan's shadow had swallowed me whole more times than I could count. That they only noticed light when it came with money. But I just said, I wanted to be sure it worked before I made any noise. He nodded slowly. "Well, I guess it's working now." And for once, I agreed with him. I was standing by the cooler, half listening to my aunt tell me how proud she was, though somehow her praise sounded like a quote she'd rehearsed from a graduation card, when I saw Ethan breaking away from a group of cousins and walking toward me. His steps were deliberate, casual, but tense beneath the surface. The way someone walks when they've decided they have to win back a room and the only way through is face to face. I braced. "Hey," he said, stopping just a few feet away. "Can we talk for a second?" I nodded, followed him to the edge of the yard where the fairy lights didn't quite reach, where the music was muffled and the voices behind us were just a distant hum. "I didn't know," he said. I stayed quiet. "I mean, I had no idea you were working on something like that." "That's huge." Still, I said nothing. He exhaled sharply and looked out at the backyard like the answers were written in the plastic tablecloths or the empty solo cups. "Look, I know the family." He trailed off, like even he couldn't finish the sentence without choking on it. "It's not a competition, all right?" I raised an eyebrow. "You said that earlier? But it sure felt like one." He flinched. "Yeah, okay. Maybe we've all made it seem that way. I didn't mean to steal the spotlight tonight." I almost laughed at that. Tonight? He'd been holding the spotlight since we were 12. Then he tried the last card he had. The desperation in a velvet box. "I've got an idea," he said. "For an app. Something in the fintech space. I was thinking maybe we could team up. I mean, now that you've got a launch and funding lined up, people would listen if it came from you. And we're family, right?" I looked at him for a long moment. And for once, I didn't see the golden boy. I saw a guy standing where he used to be untouchable. A little dimmer now. A little more real. But I didn't hesitate. "No." His face tightened. "No? I'm not your launchpad," I said. "You had years of being the star. You didn't need me then. You don't get to use me now." He stepped back, as if the words had weight. "I'm not trying to use you." "But you are," I cut in. "You just didn't expect to fall behind. And now that I've got something real, you're hoping I'll carry you back into the spotlight." He didn't deny it. Didn't argue. That silence told me more than any protest would have. I let him sit with it for a few seconds. Then I nodded toward the house. "I'm going to get another drink. You do what you want." I turned and walked away, not triumphant, not smug, just done. Behind me, I didn't hear footsteps. Only the breeze, and the party, and a chapter quietly closing.